There is perhaps no figure in literature or in the human soul more fascinating than the trickster. He emerges in the folklore of every culture, a shape-shifting presence that defies simple definition. He is not the fool who wanders naively toward the cliff's edge. No, the trickster is the one who draws the line, crosses it, and redraws it again. He exists at the threshold. From the very beginning of human storytelling, we find him. He is older than civilization, a primordial whisper in our collective memory. He is the breaker of rules, the agent of mischief, the master of deceit. But to label him is to already be tricked, for he slips from every cage of definition we build. Perhaps that is the first lesson he offers. He is always one step ahead. When we try to trace him to his origin, he is already behind us, smiling. He appears in our lives in many guises. Sometimes as the con artist, preying on naivety or greed. His victims are those unconscious of his game, tricked by their own hidden desires. To guard against being tricked, we are told, one must be a little tricky oneself, but he is not always so obvious. He can appear as the one who believes, sincerely, that they are helping while leading another astray. In this, both perpetrator and victim are asleep to the trickster's presence. He is most disruptive when he operates in the shadows of our awareness, an autonomous force. And then, in a curious reversal, he can appear as the truth-teller, the one who speaks plainly, but whom we refuse to believe. In medieval courts, this was the jester's role, the only soul granted permission to speak the unvarnished truth to the king. His cap and bells a mirror to the crown. His laughter held a sacred, piercing clarity. We meet the trickster early in our own lives. In childhood, as our ego first forms, there he is. He is a primitive, infantile energy, governed by appetite and impulse. In myth, he often begins as an animal, a coyote, a raven, a spider crawl, unfeeling, driven only by need. Yet, as the stories unfold, a change occurs. Through his chaotic exploits, he begins to grow. He starts to take on the likeness of a man. This is a necessary, if messy, progression. He is like the id, Freud's unconscious well of instinct and desire, in constant tension with the superego, the internalized voice of culture and rule. The trickster rises against restriction, against authority. He represents that raw, untamed part of ourselves that seeks instant gratification, that revels in the bodily and the scatological. He is an energy before morality. We see an early, innocent form of him when parents play peekaboo with a child, that sudden disappearance and reappearance, that joyful surprise. It is a tiny, sacred trick. It elicits the purest laughter, and laughter is his native language. The trickster comes to us when we become too serious, too rigid, when our lives are ruled by schedules and we lose our sense of play. He causes us to forget what we meant to remember, to say what we later regret, the Freudian slip that reveals a hidden truth and breaks the tension with unexpected humor. Nietzsche understood this deeply. He suggested ranking philosophers by the quality of their laughter, all the way up to a golden laughter. He imagined the gods themselves philosophizing, laughing in a superhuman way, and at the expense of all serious things. For gods, he wrote, delight in mockery. Even in sacred matters, they cannot stop laughing. Laughter, then, is the mediator. It bridges the sacred and the profane, the very space the trickster inhabits. To laugh, especially at oneself, is profound in a work. It cracks the hard shell of our persona, the mask we wear for the world, and lets in a little light. The trickster pinches us and whispers that life is a play. We are actors on a vast stage, following scripts written by culture, family, history. But he also leans in and tells us a secret. We don't have to follow the script. We can improvise, we can make our own, we can stumble, and instead of collapsing in shame, we can laugh. This freedom and its attendant responsibility is at the heart of existential authenticity. It is the call to become who we truly are. We can deceive others, and others can deceive us. But we can never truly deceive ourselves, not in the deepest places. The trickster forces us to look in the mirror. He points to the persona we've constructed to impress, to belong, a construction that often comes at the expense of our instinctual needs, our native creativity, our vital playfulness. He's inherently anti-authority. He acts for himself, not for an abstract principle or another's gain. In doing so, he pokes holes in rigid boundaries. He calls into question the fundamental assumptions that order our world. He reveals that these structures are not fixed. They can be transformed. Often, he does this for ignoble, selfish ends, but the revelation itself is neutral. It is the energy that pushes us to question power, to test limitations, to challenge the rules imposed upon us. His energy delivers hard knocks. It is an attempt to wake us up as individuals and as a culture. He steps into the center of the town square and, with wit and humor, holds up a mirror to society's folly. He addresses the unspeakable, shines a light into shadowy corners, drags the underbelly into public view. This is why comedians are often his modern vessels. They deliver his unsettling messages, frequently at great cost to their own mental peace. They are vital. When comedy is suppressed, when laughter is silenced, the trickster does not vanish. He is forced underground, into the unconscious, and, if ignored there, he will re-emerge in the form of a neurosis, a symptom, a collective sickness. Doubt is his close companion. Doubt is the precursor to change, and the trickster is the agent of change. The problem, then, is not doubt itself. The problem is our fear of change. To confront doubt, to sit with the risk of the unknown, is necessary for any real growth. The trickster triggers this fear. He's an uneasy, unsettling, yet essential companion on the path to becoming. As one scholar put it, the origins, liveliness, and durability of culture require that there be space for figures whose function is to uncover and disrupt the very things that cultures are based on. Life is not merely order, it is order and chaos in an eternal dance. The spirit of this creative disorder is the trickster. He's the Dionysian force, the god of wine, music, and ecstasy that connects us to the instinctual forces lying outside the bounds of civilization. He seeks to break convention, to lead us into wild, untamed places within and without. Nietzsche, who called himself a disciple of Dionysus, wrote, "I say to you, one must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star. Without this chaos, society grows stale. It becomes a flaw, a stagnant bureaucracy." So the trickster is not merely a destroyer. In breaking old values, he creates the space for new ones. He reshapes the world with a kind of inner magic, continually weaving the old into the new. He is honored in myth as a creator of culture. He is the one who steals fire from the gods, who brings essential gifts from heaven to earth. He is imagined to have helped shape this world, to have made it a hospitable place for a human life. But this creative power has its twin, the capacity for destruction. Trickster is at one and the same time creator and destroyer, giver and negator, he who dupes and who is always duped himself. We see this in people who present a facade of perfect kindness, purity, or control. They suppress their true, messy emotions, and often the trickster energy repressed, will erupt suddenly in self-destructive or sinful behavior. Intuitively, we sense something off in such a person. It is as if the trickster is compelling them to do the very thing their conscious mind prohibits, forcing a revelation of the shadow they hide. The lesson is not to live at an extreme of purity or chaos. It is to achieve a balance, to make peace with our dark aspects. The psyche seeks equilibrium, wholeness. It compensates for what is denied. Because he disrupts convention, the trickster is often cast as a villain. But this is a misunderstanding. He operates before the concepts of good and evil. He is responsible for both, yet knows neither. He has a light side and a dark side. What defines him is not morality, but playfulness. He possesses no values, moral or social. He is at the mercy of his passions. And yet, paradoxically, through his actions, all values come into being. His creative cleverness amazes us. It keeps alive the tantalizing possibility of transcending the social restrictions we encounter daily. He's not the devil. The devil is an agent of evil, of immoral choice. The trickster is amoral. Morality is a structure of society and ego consciousness. The unconscious, where he dwells, does not play by those rules. He epitomizes the paradox of the human condition. He occupies the liminal space that which is neither this nor that, and yet is both. As humans, we struggle with paradox, with contradiction. We struggle to grasp that unity can underlie apparent duality. In stories, he's often an animal, a fox, a raven, a monkey, a coyote, a hare, a spider. He has no fixed form. He is a shapeshifter, liquid, elusive. He can appear in any guise, imitate any form. We recognize his energy not by a fixed shape, but by its changeability, by its incendiary, boundary-breaking action. Whatever form he takes, he is a primordial being of the same order as the gods and heroes. In Greek myth, Prometheus is a trickster. He stole fire from the gods and gave it to humanity against the gods' wishes, for they knew humans were not ready to wield such power creatively. Yet this theft, this rebellion, is precisely what made us human. Fire was essential for our evolution. Here lies the profound paradox. That which is necessary for human progress is also capable of destroying us. One cannot help but think of other Promethean gifts: atomic energy, artificial intelligence, the technological singularity. When the trickster is punished, he is often replaced by stupidity. Prometheus, the forethinker, is bound to a rock. His brother, Epimetheus the afterthinker, he who acts before he thinks, takes his place. It is as if a single primitive being, both sly and stupid, has been split in two. We see him in Brer Rabbit, the African-American folk hero, an underdog who wins our sympathy. He gets into trouble through his own mischief, then must use his wit to deceive and outsmart stronger foes. Turning the tables through cleverness, we see him in Anansi the spider, the African trickster, a morally ambiguous figure who fools gods and humans alike. He is a shapeshifter, a divine trickster who, in some tales, spun the entire world into being, bringing stories and wisdom with him. In Native American traditions, Iktomi is a spider trickster spirit, once called wisdom. He was stripped of the title for his troublemaking. His malicious plans often backfire, and his tales serve as lessons. He is the one who gave the dream catcher. He is respected, feared, and mocked. He can control humans like puppets with his strings. A prophecy said his web would spread over the land of vision. Some see fulfilled in the telephone network and the internet, the World Wide Web. Iktomi, from time immemorial, considered a patron of new technology. The myth is the psyche's way of talking about itself. Some native elders saw Iktomi as the god of the Europeans, a people who seem to willingly follow his bizarre, self-entrapping tricks. Coyote is another vital trickster in native lore, his European counterpart being Reynard the fox. In Norse mythology, there is Loki, perhaps the most famous trickster god. Through his mischief and deceit, he orchestrates the death of Balder, the most beloved god. For this, he is punished brutally, but the gods know this event is the foreshadowing of Ragnarok, the downfall of the gods and the cosmos itself. The message is profound. If you completely bind the trickster, you destroy the world. His chaotic energy is part of the cosmic balance. The Greek god Hermes is a divine trickster, a troublemaker, and a thief from birth. He is also a beneficent creator who brought fire and music to humanity. His status is unclear at first. He is an outsider who wants in. Through early trickster exploits like stealing Apollo's cattle, he wins the admiration of Zeus and earns his place among the Olympians. Hermes becomes the psychopomp, the guide of souls, the messenger who navigates the boundaries between man and God, matter and spirit. He is the only god who can traverse all three realms, Olympus, Earth, and the underworld. He mediates even between the dream world and waking life. Hermes represents a third way, beyond the Apollonian rational and the Dionysian irrational. He's the god of jokes and journeys, the tricky guide. There is a story where enemies invaded his city. Hermes dressed as a simple shepherd, carrying a ram. Wherever he walked, he created safety. He showed himself as an ally in any battle, a protector in any danger. It is an image that echoes another, Jesus as the good shepherd, carrying the lost sheep. Even the trickster god has a protective, guiding energy. In many tribal rituals, people wear masks and allow themselves to be possessed by the trickster spirit. The ritual container is essential. Without it, the trickster is missing, and the behavior becomes merely eccentric or rude. But within the sacred space, these same traits connect to fertility, wellness, and joy. In the trickster's ambiguous character, we see the intimate, inseparable connection between the sacred and the profane. He strikes a deep chord because he performs fundamental cultural work. To understand him is to understand an unconscious aspect of ourselves, the part that responds to his unsettling, transformative behavior. When we describe the trickster, we are always, in some way, describing ourselves. Carl Jung called the trickster an archetype. It is part of the collective unconscious, the inherited, universal psychic structure deeper than our personal unconscious, which is shaped by individual experience. Archetypes are primordial patterns, imprints from the experience of our ancestors. They are the primary source of psychic symbols, attracting energy and structuring it, ultimately leading to the creation of civilization and culture. The trickster is everywhere because he is an eternal state of mind. Archetypes appear across cultures as images, symbols, and motifs in myth, religion, and art. The wise old man, the great mother, the hero, and the trickster. Jung noted the trickster is the archetype who attacks all archetypes. We cannot observe them directly, but they exert a powerful influence on our thoughts and actions. They are organs of the soul, the living tissue of the unconscious. They are autonomous, numinous personalities within us. If an archetype gains enough energy, it can take control of a person. The unconscious is older than consciousness. It is the primordial sea from which consciousness arises. Our conscious life dresses and guides our actions, but nothing can appear in consciousness that does not have roots in the unconscious depths. The trickster's mythological features extend even into the highest realms of human spirituality. Jung wrote of strange customs in the early Middle Ages. In the very midst of divine service, masquerades with grotesque faces, disguised as women, lions, and mummers, performed their dances, sang indecent songs in the choir, ate their greasy food from a corner of the altar, burned a stinking incense, and ran and hopped about all over the church. These pagan rituals, remnants of the trickster, were deeply popular and hard to purge from the church. His phantom haunts all ages. Jung saw the trickster as a psychologium, an archetypal psychic structure of extreme antiquity. In his clearest manifestations, he is a faithful reflection of an absolutely undifferentiated human consciousness, corresponding to a psyche that has hardly left the animal level. The trickster myth reflects a rudimentary, earlier stage of consciousness, a collective personification. It is welcomed by the individual as something known, which would not happen if it were merely a historical remnant. Why has this myth not vanished into the rubbish heap of the past? Because it continues to exert its influence on the highest levels of civilization. It points back to a primitive stage of consciousness that existed before the myth was born. Only when our consciousness reached a higher level could we look back and recognize that earlier state within ourselves. He is a forerunner of the Savior, Jung wrote, and, like him, God, man, and animal at once. He is both subhuman and superhuman, a bestial and divine being, whose chief and most alarming characteristic is his unconsciousness. He is so unconscious of himself that his body is not a unity, and his two hands fight each other. He is a primitive cosmic being, on one hand superior to us due to superhuman qualities, on the other inferior due to his profound unconsciousness. The myth has a therapeutic effect. It holds the earlier, low intellectual and moral level before the eyes of the more developed individual, so they do not forget how things looked yesterday. The so-called civilized man has forgotten the trickster, Jung observed. He remembers him only figuratively and metaphorically. When, irritated by his own ineptitude, he speaks of fate playing tricks on him, he never suspects that his own hidden and apparently harmless shadow has qualities whose dangerousness exceeds his wildest dreams. For Jung, the trickster is part of the shadow. Both are dangerous to the extent we keep them hidden and project them onto others. The trickster is a collective shadow figure, a summation of all the inferior traits of character in individuals, a corresponding projection on other social groups and nations. This collective trickster energy can manifest in a leader who is a great pretender, one who promises truths but delivers lies, who convinces the people while serving only himself. This figure appears and reappears throughout history. We often fear the external danger, the one trying to break into our house. We are less aware of the danger from the unknown, repressed part of ourselves, which can cause us to lose our very self. As Emily Dickinson wrote, our self, behind our self concealed, should startle most. The trickster accompanies us into the rabbit hole, down to the depths of the unknown self, into the valley of the shadow of death. However frightening, he helps us find depths within we never knew existed. If the shadow teaches us about our morality, the trickster is concerned with reducing the sin of pride. He keeps us from hubris, from becoming too confident in our own plans, for hubris forecasts a fall. He's vital in the process of individuation, the journey towards psychological wholeness. He deflates ego inflation, that state of being controlling, arrogant, or narcissistic. A healthy ego is a bridge to the inner world, not a fortress against it. The trickster is the ego demolitions expert, as one writer put it, who helps us become more realistic about our psychological limitations and ultimately our spiritual limitlessness. This is an energy ... that humbles us, topples our ego, upsets our plans, demonstrates to us how little our wishes matter, and dissolves the forms that no longer serve us. though we may be clinging to them for dear life. When our ego is at its most inflated, the trickster takes a pin and bursts our bubble of greatness. As we see reality again, all we thought meaningful, power, money, fame, pleasure, can suddenly feel meaningless. He humbles us. He reminds us of our limited power in a vast universe. This surrender is not a defeat. It is a necessity for self-realization, for a connection with something larger than the ego. He often works by reversal. Instead of the great helping the lowly, he disguises himself as the lowly, and in that guise, overcomes the one with the inflated ego. The Bible expresses his trickster energy clearly. But God hath chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise, and God hath chosen the weak things of the world to confound the things which are mighty. No matter how lowly or useless one might feel, the trickster suggests there is something in the higher self, in the divine, that still calls. In alchemy, the trickster manifests as Mercurius, the Roman counterpart to Hermes fluid, elusive as quicksilver. Jung wrote, a curious combination of typical trickster motifs can be found in the alchemical figure of Mercurius. For instance, his fondness for sly jokes and malicious pranks, his powers as a shapeshifter, his dual nature, half animal, half divine, his exposure to all kinds of tortures, and, last but not least, his approximation to the figure of a savior. Mercurius masterfully holds the duality of spirit and matter. He is associated with the lapis philosophorum, the philosopher's stone. A symbol of the self, he is paradoxically linked to both Christ and Lucifer, the light bringer. In comparison with the purity and unity of the Christ symbol, Jung noted, Mercurius' lapis is ambiguous, dark, paradoxical and thoroughly pagan. It therefore represents a part of the psyche which was certainly not molded by Christianity. In many ways, it points to the devil, who is known at times to disguise himself as an angel of light. This paradoxical nature reflects a crucial aspect of the self. It is essentially a union of opposites. It cannot represent totality otherwise. The elusive philosopher's stone, which promises to turn base matter to gold, is the product of Mercurius, the ultimate trickster who drove alchemists to despair. For Jung, the stone is not found in a lab, but within. The trickster, as Mercurius, contains the totality of the psyche, conscious and unconscious, known and unknown, light and dark. The psyche seeks balance, not the extremes, but the midpoint, the combination of opposites. In alchemy, this is the transcendent function. It occurs in the right moment, in synchronicity. In a way, not enough and too much are both the trickster. The extremes are how we get tricked, but the trickster, in his chaotic way, is trying to point us toward the center, the path of individuation. This echoes Aristotle's golden mean virtue as the point between deficiency and excess. True confidence lies between self-deprecation and vanity. As we find balance, we move towards psychic wholeness. Tricksters are always on the scene, attempting to show a culture its shadow, to signal the inevitable changes brewing beneath the surface. The eternal battle between creation and destruction, embodied in the trickster's polarity, is as alive today as it ever was. He makes his way to the world stage through the psyche of the individual. We must come to terms with our inner conflicts if we hope to gain clarity on the outer conflicts that mire our cultures. The integration of the trickster archetype allows a transformation from being ruled by a self-centered ego to living with integrity and relatedness. It makes us aware of the true emotions, behaviors, and thoughts that our persona hides. Without this awareness, there is no individuation. In other words, the trickster allows us to discover the self, the totality that unites the opposites of consciousness and unconsciousness. holding everything in a dynamic, balanced unity. He attempts to wake us up, and in the process, shake us to our core. Perhaps this is because he embodies the fundamental patterns we most fiercely struggle with and most desperately need to reconcile within ourselves and our world. By negotiating and disrupting conventions, by crossing every boundary, he broadens the realm of human potential. While his lessons can be difficult, he is also the force that allows us to imagine entirely new possibilities, to create from chaos. As Jung concluded, in the history of the collective as in the history of the individual, everything depends on the development of consciousness. This gradually brings liberation from imprisonment in unconsciousness, and the trickster is therefore a bringer of light as well as of healing. So the next time you feel the pinch of a mistake, the heat of embarrassment, the unsettling doubt that cracks your certainty, or the unbidden laughter that escapes in a serious moment, pause, look for him. He's not your enemy. He's the shape-shifting guide at the threshold, the whisper in the chaos, the playful spirit trying to lead you back to a more whole, more authentic, more balanced self. He's in the mirror, and in the shadow, and in the star born from the chaos within. His final trick, perhaps, is to reveal that the journey towards yourself is the only one worth taking.